There's the objection supposedly. Now, most people will give you false objections to begin with. They're called smoke screens. So first thing I have to do is identify and isolate the objection to make sure it's real. So I would say, so if you could afford it, would you move forward? Now, most people, believe it or not, will say, well, then I would look around. Well, that's because that wasn't their objection. That's the one they gave you. And you can't close a fake objection. You can't close a smoke screen.
I completely agree with you 100%, Brad. I mean, I believe what changed my business, and this was back in 1999 when, there was really not a whole lot of an internet going on. There was no virtual training. Is that when you started? Yeah. And so I didn't really, know about all that, the virtual training and the internet and all that stuff. But the truth is I put together DVDs. I sat up late at night recording myself, with my presentation, or CDs, or I remember I started with, in probably 1997, I had cassette tapes that I would duplicate out everything. So what you're saying in this day and age, there's no entrepreneur that couldn't use what you're talking about right now. I mean, this is huge. And more than ever with social distancing and people being afraid. I mean, you walk in the grocery store and they have little pieces of tape 6 feet away. I don't know if they're doing that in Vegas yet, but there's pieces of tape in the grocery store 6 feet away so you don't get too close to the person in front of you. It is wild what's happening to the world today. But guess what? The truth is, more than ever, people are virtual, online, doing stuff, learning, getting better. Tell me how to be a better closer, Brad. How do we become better closers, man? Can you give us a couple ideas, man?
Well, again, I think in order to become a better closer, you want to first try to become a better person. A lot of the times I'm trying to teach people, if you want to close deals, you want to look for ways to help other people. Now, I've got a technique that I teach people to close deals. They go to what's called Closer School. So Closer School is my little class, and then I do Closer School Live where I coach every week. But ultimately, it boils down like this. Every single person that sells you something, unless you said no, is just a salesman. The difference between a salesman and a closer is a closer comes when the salesperson or the customer says no. So like if you greeted somebody and you closed them on a deal and they never said no, you really didn't close anything. You just sold something, and that's the difference. So how do you get past any objection? That's what a closer does, is it makes them go from a no to a yes. Is first thing you have to do is identify the objection, isolate, and overcome. So like, for example, give me an objection. If I said, you want to get on Lightspeed, give me an objection.
Well, you know what? I just can't afford it.
Okay, so now there's the objection supposedly. Now, most people will give you false objections to begin with. They're called smoke screens. So first thing I have to do is identify and isolate the objection to make sure it's real. So I would say, so if you could afford it, would you move forward? Now, most people, believe it or not, will say, well, then I would look around. Well, that's because that wasn't their objection. That's the one they gave you. And you can't close a fake objection. You can't close a smoke screen. So you have to continue this process until you get the customer to say yes. You move them from a no to a yes. Now, this isn't they didn't write a check yet, but they went from no to yes. So if that was your objection, I would say, so if it was affordable, would you move forward?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so you just went from a no to a yes. And so now my problem that I have to solve is you think it's affordable. So now I'm going to go look at the process of the sales process. If I didn't build enough value, that's the problem. Because if you want an exchange to happen, you have to raise the value of your product or service higher than this customer has for the value of their money. So if you're saying it's too expensive, it's only because you don't value it higher, more. So I would first go back and determine whether I built a lot of value. Now, if I built a lot of value and you just absolutely can't afford it, Daniel, I might just be fishing in the wrong pond. In other words, you can't close every deal. You can't close someone on a $30 million house if they can't afford the $30 million house. If you're like me, I'll take a $30 million house. Where do I sign? Can I afford the payment? Because I don't care about the price tag. I care about the payment. And I used to close people at car dealerships like that all the time. They'd come in, they'd be worried about the price of something. And I'd say, let's be honest. You're not paying a check, are you? They'd say no. And I'd say, so what you're really trying to worry about is a payment, correct? They're like, yeah, you want a payment you can afford. So if the price was $90,000, but the payment was $300 a month, you'd just have a hell of a lot nicer car, wouldn't you? And they're like, well, yeah. And I'd say, well, then let's get off the price and let's worry about the payment, because that's really what you have to deal with and live with. And they're like, yeah, I guess you're right. And then I just get them off price, because when they were on price, all they want to do is grind you down to no profit. So there's a number of ways, but your question was, how do you close? Well, the more hands you shake, the more money you make. You better figure out how to prospect first. Prospect in the DMs, prospect by making comments on Facebook posts, especially ads. When someone's running an ad, you see people making comments on those ads. Well, the person that ran the ad spending money, so that's someone you want to talk to and know about. And then the people making comments, 2 or 4 against or for the ad, will tell you, depending on what your service are selling, what you can start to talk to them about. But it hasn't changed. It's just changing the way we do it. It's shake more hands, make more money. The more hands you shake, the more money you make, right? Period. So now, once you increase the volume of people you're talking to, you'll make more money. But if you want to take the next step, is just to get better at what you're doing. And then that's identify, isolate the objection, and then solve it. So to your example, you said you can't afford it. And then I got you to say, yes, if it was affordable, then it would be. So then I would keep trying to solve it. So like, what is affordable in your determination? Am I selling you the right product? Can I take it away from you? Can you afford it? You just don't want to buy it. So all of those factor into these conversations. That's why it's hard to give you just one answer. Yeah. But the answer is you identify and isolate the objection, and then you solve the problem. So like I've brought it up to people. Hey, if I could make it more affordable, would that earn your business? And they're like, well, yeah, if I could afford it, I'd love to have it. Fantastic. What can you afford a month? Well, that's the thing. I really can't afford anything. Well, if you can't afford anything, well, then that tells me that you probably need it worse than anybody, right? Because at the end of the day, if you can't afford it, that means you're financially crunched, and my product makes you money. So it's really, you can't afford not to have it. Here's what I suggest you do. I suggest that you spend some money now while you have some, because pretty soon, you're going to deplete your resources if you do nothing. So I would ask that you invest some money right now. So within 30 days, when normally you would be depleted, you'll have a recurring revenue model to utilize to make even more moves. Does that make sense? Oh, absolutely. Boom. Pulled the trigger on something he couldn't afford. Well, again, he couldn't afford it because he couldn't justify in making the investment.
If you like this video and you want to watch another one, click right here. If you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.